Have you ever felt?
Are you listening? Damn.
Alright, hello everybody, this is Lance from Fly Fish Food. This fly I want to show you today is called the Tungsten Surveyor. The Tungsten Surveyor is probably one of my lesser known patterns. It is available from Umpqua Feather Merchants, and it's been available for quite a long time. In fact, it actually was in the catalog for a while and then went away for a couple of years and then came back. And anyhow, for whatever reason, it doesn't sell as well as many of my other flies. For me, it is one that makes it on my rig very, very often. It's one of my most productive flies. It's really simple, and to give you a real brief, history of it, if you will, the Rainbow Warrior was my first commercially available fly, and the first fly that I really found that just was knocking the socks off the fish. And when I was using the Rainbow Warrior, my other really go-to pattern was a hare's ear. So I thought, why not use the Rainbow South Scud dubbing from Wapsi and basically tie a hare's ear out of it. And so I went through a few different versions. Originally the hare's ears I was tying were gold beaded and gold wired, but I kind of settled in on the silver bead, silver wire version, and that's what we now call the Surveyor. So it's available commercially on more of a Scud style hook. I tie most of my nymphs now on these jig hooks. So I've got a Hannock 400 hook in the vise. I've got a 2.8 millimeter slotted bead, slotted so it fits over that little 60-degree bend in the hook. Okay, and I'm going to add a little bit of lead wire to this. If you want to make it heavy, you could add 015. I'm going to add some 010 lead wire, and I'm just going to wrap maybe 6 or 8 times. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, right behind the bead. I'm going to hold the bead in place and slide those wraps up into the bead and then wiggle it back and forth while I put a little bit of pressure on the lead to really seat it in the back end of the bead there. Then I'm going to get rid of the excess by just breaking it off with my fingernail. I'm going to give it one more time to push into there, and that'll hold the lead in place till I get the thread on it. Okay, next I'll start the thread. This is UTC 70 denier in red. And you can't see that very well, but trust me, that's what it is. So I'm going to take the UTC thread and start it right behind the lead wire, and I'm going to build a bit of a ramp of thread to really push that lead wire back up into the bead. So it holds it in place and kind of pushes it, forces it back into the bead to really hold and lock that wire in position. And I'll get rid of the excess of my tie-in on the thread. My dry skin always shreds the thread a bit there, but then we got that little scrap picked off. Okay, now I'm going to move the thread down to the bend of the hook where I will tie in the tail. The tail on the Tungsten Surveyor is just natural pheasant tail center fibers. You could also substitute Coq de Leon if you'd like, but the original and the most productive one for me is still pheasant tail. So I'm going to pull maybe 10 or 12 of these pheasant tail fibers off the stem, even them up, and I'm going to tie them in about half the length of the shank, relatively short. And then I'm going to tie the pheasant tail until it gets right up to where the tie-in point of the lead is. That will help reduce and really create a nice taper so I don't have a little bump or a little low spot in the middle. And then one more trick here. Instead of coming in with my scissors and trimming that away, with just holding onto this thread, creating a bit of thread tension, I can just pull on those pheasant tail fibers and they'll break right off. Kind of one of those commercial tire hacks. You don't have to get the scissors back out. Most of you probably tie with the scissors in your hand. But if you don't, I know I do, it's a little more of a hassle to have to pick them up. But either way, even if you don't have to use them in your hand, you can just break that pheasant tail off. Okay, next up I'm going to use some ribbing material. This is UTC Ultra Wire in small and silver. I'm going to tie the wire in again right where the lead wire ended so that I continue to create a little bit of a taper and also level out the body a tiny bit so it's not, I guess it's a smoother taper, so it's not quite as abrupt from thin to thick. Okay, so I've now got the silver wire ribbing tied in place. Next I'm going to add the body. This fly is very similar to the Rainbow Warrior except that it uses dubbing all the way up the body where the Rainbow Warrior would use tinsel. So I'm going to use some of this Wapsi South Scud dubbing in rainbow color. I like the Wapsi product over the hairline because it's a bit softer and not quite as coarse, a little easier to use. So it's just the regular rainbow, not the tan rainbow. A lot of people get that one mixed up too. This material, when wrapped on in a nice tight dubbing noodle, will make a very slim abdomen. So I'm going to just barely coat the thread, and the thread color does make a difference because this dubbing is very translucent. So when this fly gets wet, that red thread darkens the color of the fly, and it makes for a very translucent fly. I can't prove it, but I think that the fish locally really like this fly as a sow bug. I found almost anywhere on the earth where I fished where there are sow bugs that they'll eat this fly very well. They also eat it pretty well anywhere there are scuds, but sow bugs seems to work even better. It also works in some places where there's no crustaceans at all, just as an attractor nymph maybe. But anyhow, I've got that dubbing wrapped up almost to the bead, and now I'm going to wrap the wire through just to create a little segmentation and also add a bit of durability to the dubbed body. So the small wire is now wrapped through. One trick here, rather than cutting the wire with your scissors, is just to wiggle the wire back and forth, and it'll, under tension, it'll just break away. That eliminates the little sharp edge that's remaining when you cut the wire. That'll help you so you don't cut your thread or get in the way of whip finishing when you're all done. Okay, now we've got a nice thin abdomen. The next step is to add a thorax. Okay, the thorax of this fly and the wing case of this fly are next up. So I'm going to use some Vivus tinsel in size large, just a pearl tinsel. I'm going to use this as my wing case. So I'm going to tie a little bit of it right down the back of the fly. Oops, let's try that again. I pulled it out. There we go. I got it that way. That time a little better. I'm going to tie it in and wrap over the top of it so it's right down the back of the fly. Okay. Next up, I'm going to add a bit more of this rainbow sow scud dubbing. The thorax, when I'm all done, I'm going to tease a little bit, so I'm not as worried about making this portion of the dubbing quite as thin. I still want it to be relatively thin because I want it to adhere to the thread quite well, but it's not as crucial to have it super thin like I think it is for the abdomen. So I'm going to get a bit of that. I got a little too much dubbing on there. I'm going to add enough to just create a bit of a thorax. Okay, then I'm going to take the old trusty Stonfo dual tool here and brush the Velcro side of it. Use the Velcro side to brush that dubbing to make it nice and flat across the back, and tease a little bit of dubbing to both sides. Okay, some of those are really long and unruly, but I'm going to fix that in a second here. Next up, I'm going to pull the wing case over the top, pull some of those straggly dubbing fibers back. I'm going to capture it with the thread, give it 2 wraps, then I'm going to pull the tinsel back with my fingers and wrap back over it with the thread to really lock it in place. At the same time, you'll notice I also pulled a lot of those fibers back that were extending over the bead. Last, I'm going to whip finish the thread and create a nice red thread collar. You'll see on a lot of my flies I have these hot spots, whether they're thread or dubbing. I like the contrast. In this case, the silver bead, the red thread, and then the light colored body. Okay. The last step, as far as materials go, is to come back in here and trim that wing case tinsel out of there. And then the final step is to pull these fibers down, these long fibers, and maybe cut them the same length as I pull them down and then just trim them the same length as the point of the hook. So it's okay to have this one tease out a little bit. In fact, I think it actually works better after it's a bit more buggy. But you can see it's a little bit of a rough pattern. It's not really smooth. Looks kind of like a hare's ear, if you will, but tied with rainbow dubbing. This one, again, I don't know what it imitates. I think fish sometimes eat it as a crustacean, but they also will just take it as a nice attractor. Give it a whirl. If you haven't fished a Surveyor, I highly recommend it. It's kind of a hidden gem in amongst my patterns. It's one that doesn't get as much attention, but it's one that I fish frequently. The Tungsten Surveyor, give it a whirl.